Welcome back, Tribe. I have an episode here that says why the U.S. government can't convince Americans to have kids. I wonder. Let's see what mainstream media has to say.
Fertility rates are hovering around America's fertility rates are hovering around historic lows. America's fertility rates are hovering around historic lows, with approximately 1.6 births per woman over her lifetime. This is below the level needed to sustain the population, which is 2.1 births per woman.
We're actually projecting that about 1 in 4 young adults today will never have kids. There are plenty of us out there who are kind of concerned about the falling birth rate, both for kind of its impact on people's ordinary lives, as well as for the ways in which it'll affect our economy and our government.
And we will support baby bonuses for a new baby boom. How does that sound? That sounds pretty. I want a baby boom.
Our population will, in the not too distant future, start to decline. And so that's why this is an issue for governments and for the economy, and politicians are starting to pay attention.
The concern here in the U.S. is that if we see kind of dramatic declines in fertility, we will eventually see also kind of a drag on our economy and our capacity to cover all sorts of government programs like Medicare and Social Security.
Our population is sort of getting older on average. And what that means is we have the baby boomers who are, in their older age years. So they are drawing Social Security, and they also have quite a bit of medical and care needs. And so the question is, how will we care for our aging population?
It's very hard in modern U.S. society to combine work and having kids. We have very little by way of support to families in this country.
Here's why the government can't seem to convince Americans to start families. When birth rates fall, it affects the entire economy.
One of the big drivers of economic growth is just having more people in your society, more consumers, more workers, more taxpayers in East Asia and countries like Japan, for instance, that have seen low replacement fertility for a long while and are now actually just shrinking demographically, both in terms of the Japanese economy that's been sluggish, but also in terms of the Japanese government having greater difficulty kind of paying the tab for the challenges they face in terms of particularly supporting an older population that is relying to an important degree on the Japanese government.
With the worker to retiree ratio shrinking, Social Security and similar programs could struggle to remain financially sustainable.
The Social Security trustees put out a report about how long they expect Social Security to stay solvent. The current estimation is 2033. So people are worried about that. What's interesting, though, is that the lever that we are trying to force on people now is people should have more children, so that then eventually, 20 years from now or so, we'd have more workers who would then be paying into it. It doesn't seem like a very efficient system to me because it doesn't solve the short-term solvency problem.
Leaders across the U.S. political spectrum have proposed ways to address the birth rate decline.
You've got Elon Musk, who is essentially having the ear of the president and in the White House. And he's very much interested not only in increasing birth rates, but this notion that the best and brightest should really be reproducing. And then you have someone like J.D. Vance.
So let me say very simply, I want more babies in the United States of America.
I wonder what they're going to address, if it's cost of living, if it's the gender divide that they've caused, if it's the inflation through government debt, by the way. All this debt that's ballooning, where we're owing like $1 trillion in interest payments alone, this is your inflation. This is your government printing away the dollar's power. This is why you're getting poorer and poorer every single year, no matter if it's Republican or Democrat. That is a tax. Government debt is a tax on your livelihood.
Who have, I would say, a more sort of religiously or conservatively oriented bent about this. So it's not just about increasing births, but it's about increasing births within sort of a traditional family. So marital status is really important to this group.
We had the Democrats pushing really hard for an expanded child tax credit. Now the Republicans come out with something called a baby bonus. That's what the New York Times reported. That would be $5,000 allegedly at the time a child is born. This isn't
does nothing. Isn't it cost $10,000 to birth a baby in the United States? Right? What are the numbers on that? Let me look that up. Oh, sorry, I was undershot horrendously. The average cost of giving birth in the United States is approximately $18,865. This includes both vaginal and cesarean deliveries. Out-of-pocket cost average around $2,854, according to CIVHC.org. The U.S. is known for its high cost for childbirth compared to other countries. Wow. A vaginal birth typically costs around $14,768. A C-section is averaging $26,000. Again, and then location matters depending on the state and the hospital. Insurance coverage, of course. And it says home births are ranging from $1,500 to $5,000. So basically, pushing us into home births, not going to the hospital. Neither a bad thing nor a good thing. A lot of women report positive births when they're done at home, barring any complications, obviously, if you have any issues. But why won't they ever? So, okay, cool. We get a 5,000 credit, bro, so I can actually survive the hit of giving birth in the first place, and we're back to zero. Is that a start? I guess so. Fine. But are we going to address the elephant in the room that you took a huge swath of men's jobs away and shipped them overseas? You destroyed the mostly male market through NAFTA. You destroyed the mostly male market, traditional jobs that men used to get, by outsourcing to China. You completely sold out your middle class. That was the backbone of this country. And then you instituted on top of that, in these last 15, 20 years, woke DEI policies that pushed women through the door and other people with other victim points, whatever it was, to achieve this virtue signaling quota that pushed away men out of high-paying jobs. So where are all the men at? Where the fuck did all the jobs go? Because the most men can't even be men because there's no jobs to be financially independent and provide for a family. Will they talk about this?
Pretty common policy in other countries that there's some extra child allowance, child tax credit, baby bonus sent to parents when they have a newborn. Having a newborn is expensive.
Both political parties have proposed policies that provide money to families either in the form of direct cash or tax refunds. But experts say one-off proposals are not likely to move the needle for families.
The kinds of financial incentives or benefits that we're providing just really aren't enough to change the calculus of a trade-off of bringing a...
Hey, bro, what if I did this for you guys? Listen, magically. Wave a wand, snap of the fingers, I'm president. Okay, every kid you have, you get 25% off of taxes. 4 kids means you don't pay taxes anymore. Also, we give you a home loan by the government, guaranteed, to build a house. We're going to zone land to build more houses for new families. Not gargantuan luxury mansions and all this other luxury crap they're building, but houses that normal families can use to grow into a nest egg. Okay. And that house, you will pay at a very low interest rate of like 1%. And for every kid you have, we will wipe 25% of that loan until, let's just say you reach a magic number of 6. We'll just say 6 kids, right? 5 kids, 6 kids. At 4 kids, you're tax free. At 5 or 6 kids, the house is free. At 4, once you reach the parity of 4, the house will be 75% off. You've created 4 human beings that will pay into the system, and you get to keep all your money. The government doesn't take any of it. You're not penalizing anybody. You're just creating an incentive. If you're single and you don't want a kid and don't want to deal with all that, that's great. Also, attach this to marriage. You must be together. If you're married and you have children, but you divorce, you will incur like a 50% penalty, 70, 80% penalty on the freebie you got. So, you were tax-free, but now you got to pay 20% taxes, 30%, 60, 70% of the taxes you would normally owe childless. Just like that. I guarantee you, nobody would be forced into having kids. If you didn't want to, you didn't need to. But the incentive, the amount of money you could be saving potentially. And there's other things that you could do as well. But those are some of the main ones because we need more money. So get off my back and stop taking my taxes. And we need a house to start a family. Now, let's see what they say. And you tell me how that sounds. How much incentive you would have. Oh, and then we'll fix, obviously, the divorce courts and the biases for women and all that. Of course, we'd fix it. It'd be common sense. She doesn't get access to your retirement, at-fault divorces. If one is caught cheating on the other, you won't get penalized. You get to keep those incentives that you've gotten, but the other party will lose absolutely all of them. So if your wife cheats on you, if your husband cheats on you, whatever, the penalty is for destroying the marriage and creating a unstable home situation for the children. You permanently lose all the incentives, no matter how many kids you have afterwards, or if you get remarried. Permanent loss. Beautiful. What a beautiful system. I can't remember who said this. I think it was Warren Buffett. He said, show me the incentive and I'll show you the results.
A child into one's household or family, that's an 18-year commitment. It's not just a 1-year cost.
In particular, the $5,000 baby bonus that's being sort of bandied about is not likely to budge fertility rates.
The United States lacks key policies that other comparable nations have that could potentially encourage family formation, such as federal paid parental leave, flexible work, and some fertility care access. The U.S. offers less cash and services than the average OECD country. However, it is above average when it comes to providing tax breaks for families with kids.
Research suggests to us that these are family studies that markedly increasing like the child tax credit can have a modest but noteworthy effect on births. What we estimate is that if we were to increase, for instance, the child tax credit to $4,500 per child, it's about $2,000 right now. That would lead to an increase in fertility of between 3 and 10%. On the one hand, that's a pretty modest number. On the other hand, if you kind of look at that effect over the course of the century, we're talking about millions and millions of extra kids being born because of this additional financial incentives.
But even wealthy countries with stronger social programs continue to struggle with low birth rates.
France really has been spending a lot on pro-family policies. They now have one of the higher fertility rates in Europe. It's still not above 2. It's still low. How much of their policy emphasis actually helped sort of stall out the decline so they're in better shape than some other countries is a really difficult empirical question to answer. But I do think it might be a glimmer of, optimism on the policy front, suggesting if we really do a lot to support families, we at least might be able to stall out the birth rate decline.
Many governments have attempted to influence or even limit their citizens' family formation practices, such as Japan's recent pro-natalist campaigns or China's one-child policy. But studies have found that these policies may have unintended consequences.
It's hard to imagine a scenario where the government can say to people, well, we just really need you to have kids because it's important for our country. Sort of a take one for the team, patriotic kind of exhortation. Like, that's not probably going to happen. They've tried that in China. They're trying it in Japan. They try it in Italy. They try it in Hungary. It doesn't actually work.
America's birth rate used to be higher, but it was partly driven by
You're going to have to do something that's going to be unpopular. You're going to have to socially engineer society so that you push parenthood, you push family planning, you push having children, instead of the degeneracy you push right now. Enough woke left policies, enough of this rainbow bullshit, enough of this transitioning bullshit, enough already. You're going to have to get back to a conservative, traditional family, the nuclear style or extended families, and drill in people's heads why that's better for you, why that increases your outcomes in life to be more positive, why you'll be happier for this, why you benefit financially from this. You're going to have to re-engineer the degenerate society that has been festering until it ruptured on the surface for all to see. The world sees what American society is like. That has to be cleaned up. You need to excise this disease from culture. And then and only then. And the number one people say is, I don't have security for the future. How could I possibly have a family? So people don't know, when you're looking out 10, 20 years into the future, does it look good? Does it look like we're heading in the right direction? Is our debt problem going to get solved? Do we have a political system that actually works? Or is it just ring around the rosy every 4 fucking years? Because somebody says the right thing and that side sucks. No, this side sucks. No, I'm better than him. And it's 4 years of bullshit by special interests and lobbying groups that does not serve the citizenry. Is that what this is going to be? We need to have a conversation.
Unintended pregnancies, especially among teenagers.
We have actually spent years, decades, and millions of dollars from the federal government trying to reduce our teen pregnancy rate, which was much higher than other industrialized countries. And so I think that's a good news story. The downside is births at older ages have not risen enough to offset the declines we're seeing at these very young ages. And so that has driven our overall fertility rate lower, although we all are seeing increases in births to women in their 30s and even in their 40s.
So I think this timing issue is also another question. Has this sort of delay in adulthood, the delay in people feeling like they can find a partner, they can afford a house, is all of that pushing childbearing to such a late age that people are going to wind up having fewer children than they intend or than they would like? And that raises a policy question. Is there anything policy can do about that to make people feel like they don't have to wait until their 30s to get started having a family? And this isn't to say people should start having kids earlier if they don't want to, but are there people who would start having kids earlier if it weren't at the same time that a lot of work demands were placed on people? If it were easier to afford a house before you got to your late 30s, are there policy and institutional changes we could make there?
The Trump administration has vocally supported increasing access to IVF. However, it also cut funding for IVF research. The White House did not respond to CNBC's request to participate in this report.
In thinking about the role of IVF in increasing fertility, IVF is actually pretty complicated. We have companies telling young women, work like crazy during your 20s, and don't worry, we pay for you to freeze your eggs because you can do IVF later. I'm not sure that that's actually going to lead these women to have more children. I think in some sense, we're really forcing the trade-off to the extent we're setting up an expectation that people can delay childbearing to their late 30s. In the end, it might actually exacerbate the low fertility rate or people having fewer children than they sort of ex ante would have liked to have had.
It's common for fertility to decline during economic uncertainty. It usually rebounds once the shock ends, but birth rates did not recover after the Great Recession.
And that kind of caught a lot of demographers around the world flat-footed because it also didn't happen in other countries. So this goes against a lot of this demographic history that we have, which led people to start thinking, okay, what exactly might be happening?
Even with stronger economic support, experts say America faces a deeper, more complex problem, a cultural shift in how people view parenthood itself.
More and more young adults are kind of assuming that what matters for them is, their education, their money, and especially their careers is kind of like the source and summit of their lives. And so it'd be helpful for us to kind of move more in the direction of a country like the Netherlands, where part-time work for moms is very common, as a way to kind of, maximize both their opportunity to have a foot in the labor force, but also to kind of give their kids and their families the attention that they think they need and they deserve. So I think that's certainly one answer to this challenge of kind of women, motherhood, and work.
It's not selfish for women to want to pursue work. Women also need to financially protect themselves. Parenting is really hard now. We're expected to do a lot. It's really intense. Kids aren't just running around the neighborhood.
And this is why we are not going to fix this fucking problem. These people are clueless. You don't have a choice as a woman. It's career or family. If you tell a man that, I still want to pursue work, that's a priority, and then I'd like to have kids, that's your afterthought, not a good wife. No offense to anybody that might get pissed off hearing that, but you have to see this from a male perspective. If I'm working my ass off, if I have a job that pays well, if I'm in a financial position, if I'm blessed enough that I could afford a family, that I could finally get married, have a family, do the traditional thing, God intended, yeah? I don't want a boss babe. I don't want to deal with a businesswoman. I don't want to deal with the nagging, the attitude, she has to be professional at work, but come home and somehow play the feminine natured, lighthearted, is my peace kind of woman. No, thank you. She can't. It's stressful. Work is stressful. That takes away time and attention from what? The children, the marriage, me. So if you're going to ask me to say I do, and will you marry me, and all this other stupid shit, and foot the bill for all of this, then I need a strong incentive. It's no longer there, so men are checking out. They're done. There's no point in getting married today for the average man. It's too damn expensive, and the legal risks are too high. There are no jobs where you could support the kind of family structure that was intuitive for people to just have more kids. Why not? We have excess. We have a beautiful home. You work on your one job, Frank, in the factory. We got money. You could stay at home, Margaret. Let's have some kids. Next stage in life. Experience the full breadth of the human condition and what it means to be a human. Have your own children. Most people are going to miss out on that in the near future. And I say most. We're already at 1/4. Yes? So that number is going to increase. The graph goes up exponentially. Okay? Did you see how far we tanked in their graph since 2009? There it is. We were at 2.1, slightly above that. In 2000, that's looking like 7, 8, around there. And then we had that recession of 08-09, tank since then. That recession of 08-09 represents almost like a changing of the guard, the largest upward transfer of wealth. And then you tack on COVID. This destroyed the middle class. And the banks made out like bandits. No CEO got arrested. They bailed out. They were bailed out by public money. The tax money you pay went to bail out the banks that ended up fucking you over and taking your house for pennies on the dollar. So a lot of families, good, hardworking Americans, were put out on their ass and never recovered since 08-09. That's what that looks like. Then since a bunch of money started concentrating in the top percenters, we have the largest imbalance right now of wealth. And this is what that graph is showing you. The largest imbalance of wealth. You could follow this graph right here. If you superimposed wealth equality in this country, or the inequality, excuse me, you'll see that, look, like 1975, all this, it was tied to wealth inequality. What happened in 08, 09, taking away people's nest eggs and the thousands, hundreds of thousands of jobs that disappeared with nothing after that recovery, this is what that represents. And we never recovered fully from that. Every other recession, you see there was just a dip for a good 5 years, maybe 10 max, recovery. 5 to 10 years max, recovery. Something about 08, 09, on top of the culture and social engineering, changed America completely. Did we have the leftist politics that we have today? Did we have the open hatred of America that we have today? Literally people tearing down statues, saying that America is evil, all this other stuff like evil history, colonizers, the stupid language of the left, the anti-natalist policy of the left is now pervasive in culture and government is pushing for it. And here it is. Here's what it looks like. We're about to touch on 1.6 and we'll probably go lower despite millions of migrants crossing the border, despite so-called child tax credits, all of that. The system is going to implode. They said, 2033, pensions are going to disappear. They're insolvent. They're going to start taking cuts. Unbelievable. Anyways, they don't answer shit. $5,000 wouldn't even cover the cost of going to hospital to have the baby. Exactly. They told us to not have kids we can't afford. We listened. The wolves are upset that the sheep aren't breeding. No affordable health care, no houses, or price of houses extremely high. No work from home, work over 40 hours a week. Everything is worse than before. Only get 15-day vacation out of the whole year. I wonder why they're not having more kids. Yeah, you don't have kids because your nation asked for them. You have them because you want them and you can give them a good life. How many people watching this video can have a kid right now in this moment and give them a good life? Yeah, that's what I thought. The percentages, if we could just tally that up and put it on screen, would be beautiful to see. I would probably put it like the Pareto principle. 80% of people would answer that they can't have kids right now and would have the ability to give them a good life. Only about 20% of the viewers currently right now. Most likely the batch that already has kids or is financially well off enough to actually afford that hit right now. As usual, boys, appreciate you for tuning in. Let me know your thoughts on this one. We'll see you on the next one.